we finally got another trailer for Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
And okay, first off, we're pretty big Star Trek fans.
Yeah.
I think.
If you couldn't tell by the first video we put out.
Yeah. We have other Trek stuff coming up. We're big fans. You know, I really love Star Trek, and it's probably one of my favorite franchises as of now.
Yeah.
But I'm still pretty mixed on this show, and I feel like you probably are as well. Where it's more like cautious optimism, I think, this show. Like, I'm not down on it. Like, I'm not like, oh, it's going to suck. I'm just kind of like, I have my concerns, I have my worries about it, but I'm still excited about it, and I think there's a fighting chance that it could be really good.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would agree.
So, like, the story of Star Trek Discovery from, like, the beginning has been really interesting.
Tumultuous.
So we first got the news, okay, they're making another Star Trek show.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, oh, the CBS thing kind of sucks, but it's still cool. But then there was also a concern that it was going to be more Abrams because Alex Kurtzman was on board. But then Brian Fuller came in, and everyone was kind of down for it again. We're like, oh, my God, like, Brian Fuller knows what he's doing. He's worked on Trek before.
Guy did Hannibal.
Yeah, I know. He's a great showrunner. He's worked on DS9 and Voyager, so he kind of knows Star Trek as well. So everyone kind of felt like it was in good hands. They came out and said that it's in prime continuity, and people were excited.
Yeah.
And then it went to shit as soon as they kicked him off, which I think it's pretty fair to say that they kicked him off. I think that's more or less probably what happened.
For sure.
I mean, he'll obviously deny it and publicly say that it was mutual, but I'm pretty sure they probably kicked him off.
Because he doesn't want to kill any future opportunities with
and
CBC.
It's interesting to see, like, how that happened. Like, I'd like to know the specific reasoning for it.
Yeah.
Obviously, what I'm assuming it was is he wanted to make something that was a little bit more classic Trek.
Yeah.
That kind of looks more like the franchise how it's supposed to look. And they probably wanted something that felt more like an action movie, that felt more big, like spectacle.
Yeah.
But I feel like it probably wasn't just aesthetics. I think it was probably more story decisions that he wanted to do. So yeah, I think that was probably.
Well, I think he still wrote the first.
Yeah, definitely his hand will probably be on the show
a bit. Yeah.
Like, you'll definitely see his sort of vision, but I don't think this is the same show that he had envisioned.
No.
And so after he left, it was just like, you know, it kept getting delayed, and then we started hearing weird shit about it.
Yeah.
And Kurtzman kind of took over.
And the release date moved like 6 times.
And we were just kind of like, how is this going to work, you know? And then you start hearing like rumblings about maybe this actually isn't prime continuity. Maybe they're doing another reboot.
Yeah, or it's its own timeline or something.
Yeah, you hear shit like that, and then we got the first trailer, which I thought was okay. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I liked the trailer quite a bit, which a lot of people didn't see.
Look, I mean, Star Trek fans, I feel like they can definitely be babies about it, but there's also a genuine concern where I feel like I understand a lot of the fans and where they're coming from. A lot of people want to brush them off like, oh, they're just they're nostalgia tards, obsessed with the past, and oh, Star Trek needs to move on and evolve. It's like, no, these people like are genuinely passionate about this franchise.
Well, I mean, there is certainly a section,
and they don't want Star Trek to be something that it isn't. Right? They don't want the foundation of the franchise to be something that it wasn't. Like, and it kind of feels like after the Abrams movies, there's a lot of skepticism about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like fans have the right to kind of, you know, be a little bit concerned. I feel like they can push it way too far when I'm never going to watch this show and boycott it. And
that's what I mean, is there's a certain section of crybabies that I see.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like, I don't like how the uniforms look, therefore I'm never going to watch it again. It's like, easy.
Yeah, it's kind of stupid. Like, people who complain, look, the aesthetics is not really what bothers me. Because, like, I'm not unrealistic. I understand they're not going to make a Star Trek show that looks like TNG.
Or TOS.
Or TOS, especially. Like, it's not going to happen. Even Enterprise, like, they're not going to make a show that looks like that. It's going to look modern. It's going to look high-tech and shit, you know? Yeah. And I'm cool with that. I'm fine. Like, I understand how fucking movies work and shows.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to... We're not in the 60s anymore. It's going to look different. It's going to look more like the Abrams movies.
Yeah.
So I don't have an issue with that, really. My concern is that it's like the Abrams movies. It's going to put spectacle over storytelling.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I mean, that's a concern to have for sure.
That is my biggest concern.
But it's just, I don't know.
The reason I'm concerned is because of Kurtzman and because just by the trailers, it seems like they're really pushing the spectacle of it.
Yeah.
And it's more like, look at these cool shots of these ships and, intense action movie music and they're running and stuff. And it's like, this is not really Star Trek to me.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's not that Star Trek can never be action-y, because a lot of my favorite Trek is action-y.
Yeah.
But it's still like, I don't want the foundation of a whole series to be based on spectacle and action. Like,
yeah.
And again, that's just the trailers. Like they want this to look a certain way to bring in the most amount of people. So I'm not judging this based on the trailers, and the aesthetic doesn't really bother me. Would I prefer it look more bright and more like Star Trek? Like, because when I think of Star Trek at its best, I think of like colorful and bright. It's supposed to look like a utopia, right?
Yeah.
That's to me what the show should look like. Am I that upset that it looks more dark in like the Abrams movies? No, because I understand that this is a modern TV show. They need it to look a certain way. I get that. I'm not judging it strictly based on the trailers. But that being said, the trailers don't really get me too excited outside of it being Star Trek, and any Star Trek thing is going to get me excited.
Yeah.
But it's still like there isn't too much about it that really impressed me all that much. Like, I'd be more impressed if the trailers were like really highlighting the characters, or like highlighting sort of what a story is going to be or something. But it doesn't really feel like it's doing that. It's more just like, look how intense this looks, and action-y, which, like I said, it's just a trailer, so we can't assume that that's what the show is going to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, is like they're, especially live action 45-minute episodes aren't going to be action-packed. Like, there's no action-packed TV shows that are 45 minutes
that's
long.
Totally true. Like, it has to be a story.
There has to be, and that's the thing. Like, that's why through the first two trailers, like, I've liked what I've seen, but I'm also not going to be too critical, because I'm going to wait till the series comes out to see if they fulfill on the storytelling aspect.
Yeah, that's the thing. If it has great characters, a great story, and kind of keeps like the heart and soul of Star Trek, I feel like I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is a TV show's budget is exponentially smaller than any movie.
So it has to be smarter storytelling.
Yeah, it does.
We're not Star Trek 09 here, where it can just be all spectacle and like no substance.
Yeah, like
really.
Even Game of Thrones, for example, like people kind of hinder it as, it's a show about sex and violence. Well, there's violence sometimes. Like, there's probably 5 big battles over 7 seasons, and it's the highest budget show on TV. So I mean,
yeah, exactly. There'll definitely be space battles, which
be.
I'm down for that. I love space battles, but there needs to be something more going on. And I mean, the thing is, there just needs to be a smart story. Like, if it's just we need to stop the bad guys, then that's not as interesting. But I feel like it probably should be more than that. Like, it has to be more than that for it to actually, over what is it, 15 episodes to keep your interest.
Yeah. Yeah,
another thing that concerns me as a Star Trek fan is like continuity issues.
Yeah.
Where obviously some people won't understand that, and they'll think, oh, that's so irrelevant, it doesn't matter. But honestly, like, I've invested time into this universe. Like, I've invested time watching it and like caring about it, and it's like, if they're just going to go and say, oh no, the screw the continuity and screw how this is what the Klingons look like now, we're not going to explain it. If that's what they're doing, then that's kind of disappointing. Like, I want them to keep continuity of the Prime timeline.
Yeah.
Also, I'm kind of, there's a part of me that's concerned whether this is even Prime continuity at all. Because have they even said that since like Brian Fuller was on?
No.
So like, I'm kind of worried that it's actually not Prime timeline. Now, look, if they do another like reboot gimmick, like, oh, there's a time travel thing that sets it off. Again, that's not as interesting as like a show set in the Prime continuity. It kind of seems like a cop out.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be as pissed about that if they just did a full on reboot.
Yeah.
But the ideal situation is, yes, this is the Prime timeline. This is 10 years before the original series. If that's what it is, I'm down for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of even worried about that. The Klingon thing is a big issue for a lot of fans, where I feel like most of the fans who complain, I feel like that's sort of the main thing. And look, I don't like how they look. It's going to be hard for me to think of them as Klingons, But I also understand that this is not the first time they've changed the Klingons, and it's unfair to bitch about it because, they've changed the Klingons multiple times now.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at the TOS Klingons to, like, the TNG Klingons, it's, like, night and day. Like, they don't...
Yeah,
how can you...
completely different.
You couldn't even say they're the same species. And obviously they retconned it in Enterprise, where they actually explained that there was a virus that made them look different.
Yeah.
So, to me, as long as they explain it, and there's, like, an explanation that makes sense, and the ancient Klingon thing, it doesn't make all that much sense to me, but if they do some bullshit like that, fine. But I still don't understand the need to change the Klingons.
Yeah.
I guess they think maybe the old makeup looks outdated or something, or they want them to look more like monsters, but
I don't know.
it's just kind of stupid to me. Apparently, I watched the panel for Discovery, and apparently the Klingons are actually going to speak Klingon in the show.
Yeah, with subtitles.
Which is cool. Like, there's going to be Klingon with subtitles, and they've actually gotten a Klingon linguist on to, like, make sure, as stupid as that sounds.
Oh,
But yeah, it's actually real Klingon that they're going to be talking, which I'm sure there's some bastard out there who speaks Klingon that's going to be excited about that. Yeah, so I'm very optimistic about the show, but I'm also very cautious. Where I'm just worried mainly about, like, all the behind the scenes drama and the show being delayed, and it kind of feels like it might be a mess.
Yeah.
I'm also worried about them, going against kind of the heart of Star Trek and kind of fundamentally misunderstanding it. Because I feel like that was the issue with the Abrams movies, is you had people working on it that just don't get it. And they weren't even trying to get it. They were just like, hey, let's just use this franchise to just do something that it's not.
Yeah.
And again, I understand it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be like TNG, like, oh, it's we need to be nice to gay people, and like, it's not going to be like that. It's not going to be social commentary every episode or crazy sci-fi thing. I get it's going to be a little bit more assembly line, a little bit more dumb, more actiony. I can live with that as long as it has kind of elements of old Trek in it.
Yeah.
As long as it's not just something. As long as it's not just Space Adventure Quest, the TV show, that just happens to be called Star Trek,
Yeah, which that second trailer made it look a little bit like.
But yeah, that's the issue. That's my issue. I mean, yes, there obviously are certain references, like Sarek's in it, and we got Mudd is in the show as well.
Boy.
I honestly, I'm expecting. They did say in the Comic-Con panel that they are packing, like, every single corner of this show with Easter eggs and cameos and shit. So I'm kind of excited for that. I'm sure they'll have tons of, like, TOS episodes, like, or TOS characters that show up for one shot. Even just, like, guys that appeared in, like, one episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, there'll be tons of that. I'm kind of expecting we probably will see Kirk and Spock pop up in the show.
For sure.
I think that will happen.
For sure.
They're just too iconic not to show up, especially Spock. I think we're probably going to get to see. Or at least there'll be some sort of reference to Spock.
I mean, if Sarek's in it, Spock.
Yeah, they'll at the very least be a reference to Spock. Mm-hmm. But I feel like we might see, like, anyone in the bridge crew on TOS is potential. I think there'll definitely be references to the Cage and Captain Pike. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that will exist in this show too. So I hope it's really a fan thing, because it's been so long since we've had, like, real Trek that it's like it'll be nice to.
13 years.
Yeah, Enterprise went off the air in 2006, I think.
Okay, so 12 years. Or 11, I guess, at this point.
Yeah.
11 years.
Yeah, okay. And, so that's kind of my thoughts on Discovery. I'm obviously super fucking excited for it because it's Star Trek. Yeah. Even if it's bad, it'll just be nice to have new Trek to talk about. And
well, just another show to watch week to week to get excited about. Cause I don't do that with TV all that often. So.
Yeah, like there's only a couple shows I'll really follow. Yeah, but I'm definitely excited to see. I think there's a good chance the show will be good, I think. And I'm kind of hoping for the best. Obviously, I'm very concerned about the production, the behind the scenes, the fact Kurtzman is on. The trailers looking more like Space Adventure Quest than Star Trek. But I still think as long as it respects continuity, keeps the heart and soul of Star Trek, has great characters, and tells a great story, I'll be happy. And I'm realistic about it. I understand it's not going to be like the old days. It's not going to be the typical Trek. But as long as it has those key elements, I think it will be solid. And I'm really looking forward to watching it.